Good morning. Good to have you with us. I'm Joe Fryer.
And I'm Stephen Romo in for Savannah Sellers today. And we begin this morning in Delaware, where Hunter Biden is set to appear in court later today to face tax-related charges.
The president's son is expected to ratify a plea deal with prosecutors and plead guilty to 2 federal misdemeanor counts of failing to pay his taxes. He also faces a separate felony gun possession charge that is likely to be dismissed if he meets certain conditions, according to court documents. It's the culmination of a 5-year-long investigation, which concluded that Hunter Biden did not pay taxes in 2017 and 2018, despite owing more than $100,000. He has since paid back the debt with interest. NBC News investigative correspondent Tom Winter is in Wilmington, Delaware, and NBC News legal analyst Danny Savalos is here with us in New York with a closer look at today's hearing. So, Tom, Biden is expected to plead guilty. What can we expect from today's hearing?
Right, so this should be a hearing where really we don't have a ton of surprises today, because not only do we know what the charges are, and you laid them out, but we also know how he's going to plead, which is guilty as part of a plea agreement. Now, we haven't seen those documents yet, but bottom line here is this is a 5-year-plus investigation. They're looking at tax issues. NBC News and others have well reported on those problems, and it's for somebody that earned over $1.5 million and then failed to pay over $100,000 worth of taxes. That's for the years 2017 and 2018, and that felony gun charge that you mentioned, that stems back to October of 2018, where apparently he had a gun while also using or abusing drugs, according to the charge. And so that's going to go to pretrial diversion, a pretrial diversion agreement. And as you suggested, if he successfully completes the parameters of that, it's possible that those charges could then be dismissed. Not expected to get jail time, though sentencing will be determined at a later date.
All right, and Danny, tell us about those 2 misdemeanor tax charges and that felony gun charge. Just how serious are we talking here? Typically jail time with these?
It's a complicated question. Straight up a federal misdemeanor, you can expect to get a probation-only sentence. I mean, even the lowest level felony calls for 0 to 6 months in the sentencing guidelines. But another question is whether or not a misdemeanor should have been brought for these tax crimes. So that is something that I think reasonable minds can disagree about, because some will say, look, in tax cases, you work it out. You don't necessarily bring charges. But on the other hand, there was a lot of money involved here. So it's fair to say that this could have been charged as a crime and was properly charged as a crime. The part that I think there's a clearer answer is the federal gun charge. Rare is the case that this is something that is that is offered pretrial diversion, which is a free bite at the apple. It means that if you enter into probation, you stay out of trouble, you come back, and the government usually dismisses the case. I'm not aware of pretrial diversion ever being offered in a federal gun case. Frankly, I'm not aware of it being offered in any case in the federal system. Happens all the time in state cases, DUI cases, low-level drug cases, but virtually nothing in federal court is a low-level anything. So pretrial diversion statistically isn't even, or historically hasn't even been offered by the majority of districts in the United States. So I am correct when I say it is rare. Was it appropriate in this case? Maybe. But if so, I'm very interested in it for my clients. And if the government's going to start offering it, I'm in line.
So speaking of rare, Tom, Congress got involved in a criminal case. We don't see that. Republicans in Congress took action yesterday trying to persuade the judge on how to proceed. What can you tell us about that?
Right. So one of the congressmen, the actual chair of the House Ways and Means Committee, sent a letter through his attorney to the court yesterday, and effectively saying, look, we have a whole bunch of things we want to present to you. And we know that one of those things was some of the information from Hunter Biden's tax returns. We don't have the full letter, and we don't have all the documents, because at some point there's a back and forth that occurs between Hunter Biden's attorneys and the attorney for the congressman, effectively saying, hey, you can't file that type of stuff to the docket. We haven't agreed to that. And then apparently there's some sort of miscommunication at the clerk's office where that letter and those associated documents are taken down. The judge wants to know exactly what happened and is threatening sanctions for Hunter Biden's attorneys. It's all really complicated. We expect it all to be worked out this morning before things really get underway for Biden's guilty plea. And we don't anticipate that it'll impact that guilty plea or any follow-on sentence.
And Danny, I wanted to ask you quickly here. I know that Hunter Biden, of course, expected to sign off on this agreement, but what about the judge? Is she bound to this?
I have to tell every client, as all criminal defense attorneys do, that the judge isn't required to accept the plea agreement. He or she may reject it. And that does happen from time to time, but very, very rarely, especially in a case like this, where both sides are very much on board. And it's a situation where the government is asking or going to ask for a probation-only sentence. So in all likelihood, the judge will accept it. But you always have to advise your client there is a possibility the judge may reject this plea agreement. And it does happen, albeit rare.
All right, a lot to watch. Tom, Danny, thank you both.
This morning, it seems to be business as usual for former President Donald Trump, who's on the campaign trail while facing the possibility of a second federal indictment. Trump spent the day yesterday in New Orleans stumping for votes. A little more than a week ago, he announced that he is the target of special counsel Jack Smith's investigation into alleged interference in the 2020 election. Trump has denied any wrongdoing. NBC News Justice reporter Ryan Riley joins us now with the latest on this. Ryan, good morning. So during his rallies, how's Trump handling the possibility of yet another federal indictment?
You know, he made some brief comments about the situation when asked about it by NBC News. Take a listen.
President Trump, are you concerned about your own people testifying before the special counsel?
Thank you very much. No, we're innocent. We're totally innocent. We have a bunch of crooked people running this country. They're dishonest, and they're crooked people running this country.
So this really is Trump sort of taking this in stride. You know, obviously, I think he sort of preempted a lot of the news on the special counsel by publicly announcing that he had received this target letter, which essentially means he's almost guaranteed to be charged. It's really just a matter of timing at this point. Yesterday, from what we could tell, at least publicly, none of the grand jurors were in the building. The grand jurors have been hearing this evidence of you know, with the special counsel investigation, who have been looking into some of these issues, who have heard testimony last week from one of Donald Trump's top aides, who was with him in the months leading up to January 6th. So we don't know exactly what happened or whether there was a change in plans, but the next day that they typically are expected to come in to session is Thursday. Of course, all of this could be thrown out the window and changed, and we saw that in Florida, where they had a special session on a day that the grand jury was not expected to meet the day afterwards. So, you know, theoretically, the grand jury could be meeting today for all we know. And I know there's a lot of security around this. In previous cases, we've seen grand jurors brought in vans to the courthouse, and then, you know, if they don't come down for lunch, it's really difficult for us to see them. So because of the unprecedented nature of this, I think it would be reasonable to suspect that the court is taking some precautions to extra protect the identities of those grand jurors who are hearing these critical charges.
So as we wait, Ryan, we are learning that the special counsel is looking into a meeting that then President Trump had. It was back in February 2020, where he was briefed on election security. What do we know about that meeting? Why could that be significant?
Yeah, you know, the significance of this is that Donald Trump apparently made some comments about how secure the election system was, and was apparently a little bit surprised. If you just think back and remember, Donald Trump has been saying this stuff for years. In the lead up to 2016, when he was expected to lose the election by a lot of pundits, he was already sort of warning that there was going to be fraud, After he won the Electoral College, his ego still wouldn't allow him to admit that he lost the popular vote. So he even set up this commission during his presidency to look into these cases of voter fraud. And, you know, any expert on this who you ask who has any experience at all says that mass voter fraud is not a problem. And that's essentially what his committee was not able to find. And his Justice Department brought only a handful of election integrity cases during the entire 4 years he was in office. So this just isn't a problem. And I think that that's sort of what this meeting highlights, is that the election system is secure, and no one could reasonably believe these sort of absurd election lies that there was this mass voter fraud in 2020.
So, Ryan, you know, Jack Smith is also investigating Trump's handling of classified documents. Trump has already been indicted in that case. He maintains he's done nothing wrong. But we've now learned that there were a total of 8 search warrants filed in connection with how he handled those documents after he left office. Real quick, help us understand. Does this mean prosecutors are looking at 7 other locations or people?
You know, the number sometimes can get a little bit dicey. I think that that's, you know, it's just a broader investigation that they've looked into a number of issues in connection with this. But it is a signal, I think, that this is not fully wrapped up. They're still continuing to interview people. That investigation is ongoing, and it sort of signals that this one could be too. You know, this is obviously the Jack Smith investigation into January 6th and the lead up to the election, or in the lead up, the aftermath of the election, is really wide spanning. So you could see a situation where Donald Trump is indicted, but the investigation continues.
All right, Ryan, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
All right, turning now to an alarming situation that startled the world of basketball and beyond. Bronny James, the son of NBA icon LeBron James, is now in stable condition after suffering cardiac arrest during basketball practice at the University of Southern California. NBC News contributing correspondent Kaylee Hartung has those details.
Hey there, he has got one of the most famous names in all of sports, but LeBron James Jr. hasn't even taken the floor for a college basketball game yet. On Monday, he suffered a medical crisis here at USC as he gets ready for his freshman year. The details, they're still unfolding.
The son of a basketball superstar facing a medical emergency. Bronny James rushed to the ER during a practice Monday at the University of Southern California. A family spokesperson saying while practicing, Bronny James suffered a cardiac arrest. Medical staff was able to treat Bronny and take him to the hospital. He's now in stable condition and no longer in ICU. The 18-year-old is the son of NBA legend LeBron James and one of the most highly touted incoming college basketball players. He was preparing for his first season on the USC basketball team when the incident happened at 9:26 a.m.
Agent to rescue 15 unconscious, 3400 South Figueroa.
Earlier this summer, Bronny James starring in the McDonald's All-American game, his dad cheering him on.
He's just proud, my dad, you know.
LeBron not shy about his wish to one day share the court with his son.
Being with him, spending a full year with him in the same uniform, that would be the icing on the cake.
Damar Hamlin, who suffered cardiac arrest on the football field earlier this year, tweeting, "Prayers to Bronny and the James family as well. Here for you guys, just like you have been for me my entire process." Cardiac arrest is the leading cause of death for young athletes, and African-American college basketball players like James are the population at the highest risk, according to a study in the American Heart Association Journal.
What could have led to this?
There are multiple factors that can cause cardiac arrest, whether it's something that they've had, like a disease in the heart, so it's congenital, or something that they developed after having an infection.
Doctors with this advice for parents of athletes of any age.
Any student that's going to start any sport should do a pre-participation physical, and that includes an evaluation of their medical history, and then also asks the appropriate questions.
And experts encourage parents to ask their child's school or athletic facility if they have an emergency action plan in writing that includes a defibrillator, that AED that can shock a heart back into rhythm. They say could be a lifesaver. Back to you.
Important stuff. Kaylee Hartung, thank you for that. And joining us now for more, Dr. Dave Montgomery. He's a board-certified cardiologist and a managing partner at Prevent Clinic. So good morning, doctor. Thanks so much for joining us today. So let's start with that shocking part of this, how something like this could happen to a seemingly healthy, young, physically active person like Bronny James. We heard in this piece he's part of the demographic that is most affected by cardiac arrest. So why is this, and should parents be thinking about this when they send their kids to play sports?
Yeah. Good morning to you, Stephen. So, there are two main reasons, or two common reasons, for a young, healthy athlete to have this. One is a structural problem with the heart, either congenital or something that one's acquired, where the actual tissue causes a heart rhythm abnormality to stop the heart. Okay, arrest means to stop the heart. The other one is in a structurally normal heart where the electricity is abnormal. Here's a really important point. I know there was that study by the American Heart Association. This is not necessarily an outlier in African Americans. That's going to be a misconception. The two commonest kinds of cardiac arrest in young athletes are not more predominant in African Americans. We've just seen it, right? So we just saw it with Damar Hamlin. We're seeing it with Bronny James. So that might be there. But for example, long QT syndrome or hypertrophic cardiomyopathy are not more common in African Americans. Really important for us to understand that.
Absolutely important. Also important to note, sudden cardiac arrest, not the same as a heart attack. A lot of times those two things are mixed up. So what are the differences there?
Yeah, so a cardiac arrest just means that the heart stops beating, and there are a number of reasons, as we hit on a few of them, for a cardiac arrest. A heart attack is very different. Heart attack suggests that there is a blood vessel that is blocked for any number of reasons. The main reason is a plaque that forms and disrupts the blood flow to that part of the heart. Depending on where that is, it can have a large effect or a small effect. A heart attack can, if the heart attack is large enough, cause the heart to stop. If it's smaller, and we see this in much older people, for example, the risk factors for heart attack, much older, if the heart stops, obviously, due to the lack of blood flow, you can have a similar kind of a situation where you arrest the heart.
So if someone happened to be present when someone appears to be going into cardiac arrest, losing consciousness, that type of thing, what should we do?
Yeah, so really important message here, Stephen. We all should know hands-only CPR. It saves lives. Go to the American Heart Association. There are videos that show you we don't have to do mouth-to-mouth anymore, Stephen, as you know. And I think that Kaylee made a really good point in her lead. That is that all parents that have their kids in performance, high-performance sports should demand a pre-participation screen. Now, I'm going to add something to that. That includes a cardiovascular evaluation. It's important for us to understand in the American guidelines, it doesn't recommend that all children who participate in sports have that heart evaluation. I am sort of an outlier in that regard. I think we should. The Italians have led the way in this, and they say no matter what the cost effectiveness is, we are going to screen our kids because when you lose one child to cardiac arrest, it is more important than the cost savings that might occur from screening a large population.
And the peace of mind that screening could bring parents, no doubt they would enjoy that. Dr. Dave Montgomery, important insights. Thank you.
The nation's largest package carrier, UPS, has reached a tentative deal with more than 340,000 of its workers. The deal averts a strike that could have had a crippling impact coast to coast. This is the latest resolution to a spike in labor disputes this summer. Here's NBC News correspondent Steve Patterson.
Yeah, this was certainly a crisis averted. The nation's largest package carrier finally coming to an 11th hour agreement with the union, representing 340,000 of its workers. A strike would have easily had ramifications for the U.S. economy. Now there is an agreement, but this is far from the only industry facing a labor battle. In the dead heat of an emerging summer of strikes, UPS reaching a tentative agreement with its 340,000 worker-strong Teamsters union, avoiding a potentially economy-rattling labor action. The union, whose members still need to ratify the deal, saying it secured a new 5-year contract, boosting Teamster wages and solidifying safety issues.
But I think it's a great victory for the labor movement in general. We actually took on corporate America and won today.
In a statement, UPS said the deal provides industry-leading pay and benefits while retaining the flexibility we need to stay competitive. But in what's being dubbed a hot labor summer, so much remains on the line.
And used without our permission.
A day of action highlighting the ongoing actors and writers strike.
We will not have you take away our right to work and earn a decent living.
Those picket lines, with potential to expand, 150,000 auto workers began negotiations for a new contract with U.S. automakers this month. More than 26,000 American Airlines flight attendants preparing to vote on strike authorization. And local actions, like an ongoing Los Angeles hotel worker strike, drags on for weeks.
Workers, whether they're in the hotel industry, whether they are in the logistics, whether they are in the entertainment industry, they are feeling economic pressure and economic insecurity.
And while several of the disputes are fueled by traditional wage disagreements, there are huge fears over new technologies like AI.
There is tremendous insecurity among workers about being displaced by new technology.
And back here in Hollywood, actors and writers, of course, still on the picket lines out in the heat, all in a labor dispute that is forecasted to stretch on for weeks, if not months. Back to you.
All right, Steve, thank you so much. Now for a closer look at the extreme heat that is still hitting the country from coast to coast. Let's get a check on your Morning News Now forecast.
Meteorologist Michelle Grossman joins us now with the details. Good morning, Michelle.
Good morning to you both. Yeah, still hitting us and hitting us hard. We're looking at temperatures into the triple digits. Once again, it's far-reaching, it's intense. And look at these numbers. Compared to this time yesterday, we're looking at 108 million people impacted by a heat alert. Those numbers will probably go up, but that's a lot of people. We're looking at those alerts stretching from the south central states to the central plains and northern plains, the Midwest, into the Northeast. We have an excessive heat warning. That's for Phoenix, where you see that hot pink color in the Southwest. And we have an excessive heat watch that goes into effect on Friday in Philadelphia. We're going to break some records in the Northeast. The good news is we're going to see a turnaround by Sunday. I'll show you that in just a minute, at least in the Northeast. We're looking at that area of high pressure. That's that heat dome tacked in place. It's not budging. So it's pushing that jet stream far to the north. That's allowing all this hot air to come in. Think of it almost like a heat pump. And that's why it's so far reaching. We're looking at the Southwest, the South Central states, into the Midwest and Northern Plains, also in the Northeast, and so many triple digits on the map here. Phoenix 118, El Paso 105, Lubbock 102 today, Dallas 102, 100 degrees in Wichita. You factor in the humidity, it's going to feel warmer than it is. So St. Louis, 100 degrees today, that's your expected high temperature. You factor in the humidity, it will feel like 104. And we're looking at Minneapolis feeling like 100 degrees today. That's today. Then we go towards tomorrow. So we look towards the Northeast and we are going to look at sweltering temperatures. DC feeling like 105 on Thursday. Same story in New York City. The air temperature 98 degrees, but you need to factor in the humidity because that's what it feels like on your body. So we're looking at 90s all across the Midwest, the Great Lakes into the Northeast, and then we're looking at those hundreds down to portions of the plains. Now, as we go throughout Friday and Saturday, we're going to keep it hot in Boston, 88 degrees on Saturday, but look at that big dip by Sunday, 78 degrees. Same story in New York. We're going to get a front that comes through late Saturday into Sunday, and that's going to give us some relief by Sunday. So much better feeling in New York City by Sunday, 83 degrees. Same story in D.C. Still warm near 90 degrees, but at least not 98 degrees. We're not going to see any relief, though, in the southeast, the south central states by this weekend. We're looking at temperatures still in the triple digits on Sunday in Dallas, near 100 degrees in Houston, and near 96 degrees in Albany, Georgia. So that's the heat story. We're also looking at the chance for severe weather. Once again, we have all this heat and humidity and a front moving through. That's going to spark some storms in the Great Lakes. We could see some really strong storms. We're seeing some heavy rain right now. Remember, warmer atmosphere holds a lot more moisture, so any of these downpours could create some flash flooding. 24 million people at risk, guys. We're looking at winds gusting up to 65 miles per hour. Could see some hail and watching the chance for a few tornadoes. And then that storm threat returns to the northeast on Thursday. We'll talk more about that next hour.
You describe it as like a heat pump. I would like to break the heat pump, if that's at all possible,
Yeah.
Michelle.
Unplug it.
Exactly.
Yeah, just unplug that thing.
That'll work too. All right. Thanks, Michelle. Appreciate it.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.